Our sponsor for today is Matthew 614. We have an anonymous donor who's been a sponsor for many years and does not want to be identified. Just Matthew 614 is, when you give, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And that's what he believes, and so he doesn't want to be identified, but that's our sponsor for today, and we thank him for being such a faithful sponsor. Okay, I'm going to ask our panelists to come on up, and I will tell you the format as they're coming up. Each person is going to give you a little, maybe a 5-6 minute discussion on their life, basically. Who they are, how they got here, their faith journey, their business journey. And then I'll ask each person a question. And then we'll throw it open and ask if any of you have a question for them, and we'll go back and forth that way until time is up. So that's what we're going to do. We have Debbie Ronka, Leanne Kroon, and George Abercrombie. And we have a vacant seat here. The vacant seat is for Larry Chapman, who 11 o'clock last night emailed me and said he's stuck out of town. He can't get back in time for our luncheon. So Larry won't be here today. So if you would. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, Leanne, let's start with you since you're in the middle.
That's why I sat in the middle, so that.
What career? Oh, I'm sorry. Why don't you go ahead?
You can. Okay. You're on. So my name is Leanne Kroon. I am a CPA by trade, but my field of operation, or my direction, is that I do nonprofit administration. So I have worked my entire career, 30 plus years, in the nonprofit arena. I was the CFO for a charity clinic in downtown Houston, called San Jose Clinic, for 15 years, and then I was executive director for Tamagua here in Tomball for 3 years. And now I am the Chief Administrative Officer for an organization called Axia International, and I've been there now for 4 years. And so I've, kind of been in the, with San Jose Clinic, Tamagua, been in the kind of healthcare, nonprofit, charity clinic arena, but with Axia, we actually service all variety of nonprofits. From we do have a couple of clinic associations, but we do most of our clients are actually mission workers, and so independent mission workers that go all over the world. I think we have clients in every continent except for Australia and Antarctica, but we kind of cover the globe of all over. And so we do, like I said, it's nonprofit administration. We're doing treasury management for all of our clients. We do payroll and HR. We also do donor management and reporting and compliance. So it spans a wide variety of tasks and responsibilities. So, what else? Is anything else that I should be? Yeah, so I was born and raised here in Houston. And so I'm a native Houstonian. My church affiliation, I'm Catholic. I was born and raised Catholic. And went through the Catholic school system all the way from kindergarten all the way through college. I graduated from the University of St. Thomas here in Houston. And so, and being in, I did, right after I graduated from St. Thomas, I thought that, okay, I had been working actually in the, all through college. I worked at the Chancery, which is the main offices for the Catholic Church, for the diocese here in Houston, worked, for the bishop. in their finance office. And so I was kind of sheltered a little bit because I was working in that environment all through college. And then right after I graduated, I'm like, I need to get out and work in the secular world. So I got a job with a CPA firm and was there. And it was very eye-opening experience of, all of a sudden being in this corporate, kind of corporate office, and just the things going on there. I just like, okay, I don't like this environment. And fortunately, I'd just gotten married, and then we were expecting our first child over the 2 years that I worked there. And after I had my daughter, I was able to then just kind of work part-time. I was trying to be a stay-at-home mom, but I went back to working at the diocese on a part-time basis, and I was like, I just felt so much more at home being in that, just kind of being in that environment. And so that's pretty much why I've stayed in the nonprofit, and it's been an very important part of my life to be in that environment. Mm-hmm.
George? Is this one work?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm literally just going to read this. I got to put my glasses on because, as I told Paul, if I were left to just talk about it, I'd ramble on and we'd run out of time. Nobody would ask a question. My name is George Abercrombie. I am the husband of a wonderful woman and father to 3 kids. I have a son that's 16, 2 daughters, 14 and 11. I work as a commercial loan officer and banker at Frost Bank. Spent most of my free time volunteering with the Boy Scouts of America and a member of the Tomball Rotary Club. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm the fifth of 5 sons. Much like Leanne, I'm a cradle Catholic, so born and raised in that faith. Attended Catholic school my entire life. My elementary years were at an archdiocesan school run by nuns. Still terrified of them. Middle and high school was spent at Holy Cross High School in New Orleans, educated by religious brothers and lay teachers alike. Apart from my education by the clergy, we would spend weekends, holidays, and even summers with members of the church. My parents had 5 boys that attended Holy Cross for 18 straight years. That developed deep friendships with the brothers. They were frequent guests at home for dinner, at holidays, and even on beach trips with us. By the time I was 8 years old, my oldest brother had entered the seminary to become a Benedictine monk, which ushered in a whole new level of knowledge of the clergy for me. That was a totally different style. I would go on to attend summer camps with the monks and seminarians running our summer camps. I did that every year until deep into my teenage years. It was late in those teenage years I really started questioning my faith. My parents, with everybody else gone, they were near empty nesters, became very laxed on focusing with me. Ultimately led to me not going to church at all. Moved into my college days, completely abandoned and departed my faith, and instead embraced the wonderful party life that was the city of New Orleans. And Dave, who's known me for years, this will probably come as a surprise. I was actually arrested or near arrested several times in the city of New Orleans, including an overnight stint in lockup for driving while intoxicated. In that time, dropped out of college, lost my job, generally into a downward spiral. I lucked out and benefited from the very cliche love of a good woman. A good friend of mine convinced me to go back to college. While there, I ran into a girl who I kind of knew from a friend of a friend who was just starting college, with a little bit of age difference. We would run into each other a couple more times that semester. Running into each other became lunch, that became dates, and eventually turned into a near 20-year marriage. Jennifer got me going back to church. Found less reasons to go out drinking and partying, more time to spend with her. We were married in the Catholic Church by a lifelong friend of my parents. In 2005, while working for Hibernia Bank in New Orleans, my life and everybody else in the city of New Orleans was changed when the city was completely destroyed by Hurricane Katrina. Jennifer and I had been trying for a baby, decided to put that on hold because I was being transferred to Houston. But God had a few different plans, and my son was born shortly afterward. We quickly found a home here at St. Ignatius of Loyola Church. Jennifer would go on to teach preschool there for 7 years, as well as formation classes. We were active with our kids with the youth groups and the Cub Scouts there. When Hurricane Harvey destroyed St. Ignatius, we began attending Christ the Good Shepherd Catholic Church, where we still attend today. Currently, my wife is a teacher with Klein ISD. She's an active volunteer with the kids' schools, church, and the Boy Scouts of America. My son attends Klein Oak, where he's a member of the ROTC competition engineering team. He volunteers as a youth leader at church, and he is working towards his Eagle Scout rank any day now, hopefully, and hopes to attend Texas A&M to study engineering and to be a member of the Corps of Cadets. My oldest daughter, Isabel, attends Criminal Intermediate. She's a member of the National Junior Honor Society, a cello player in the orchestra. She's an avid dancer, having danced competitively for several years. Also a volunteer at church and a member of the Boy Scouts of America. And my youngest little one, Margaret, attends Beningus Elementary. She enjoys theater and art. She's in the Cub Scouts currently and going to be moving over to Scouts BSA next month to join her sister. I've worked for several banks since arriving in Houston, starting with Hibernia, which was purchased by Capital One. I managed branches for them and then later for regions for 5 years. Moved into small business banking with Whitney Bank before moving to commercial banking with Wells Fargo, and ultimately to my current role in commercial lending with Frost Bank. My mentality as a banker is based on my beliefs. Do unto others as I would have done unto me. I treat my clients with respect, give them the best experience I can. I'm honest with them, for better or worse. I don't beat around the bush and I don't sugarcoat things. I give them the best deal I can, and I truly enjoy my time with my clients. I look for clients who have a similar mindset, enjoy my relationships where I can discuss faith, family, and even politics with my clients. I'm a true believer that if you help others achieve their goals, you'll achieve yours. I take that mentality to work, to church, to Scouts, and more importantly, to home. Help others, trust in God, and your dreams will be achieved.
Well, hi, I'm Debbie Ronka, and I'll say business-wise, I am an author, a certified life coach, a speaker, and a trained prayer minister, but I'd love to just tell you about my personal life. I'm originally from Philadelphia. We were transferred here back in 1984, and I just love hearing the stories of how God finds us. I always had faith in God, but I never truly understood that I could have a personal relationship. And it wasn't until I turned 21. And I love how God works because he sees us seeking. And I was working up in Philadelphia, and there was a young woman who came to the personnel department. And back in the 70s, I was an executive secretary. We typed and we did shorthand. And Cerise, she typed like this. She could not type. She knew nothing about shorthand. But this personnel director said, there's something about you that I feel like I'm supposed to give you this job. And she comes to my department, and it was through her that 8 of us gave our hearts to the Lord. And so God will, I encourage you, pray for a harvest for your loved ones because you never know how God strategically is going to place someone in their lives. And so it's through her that I came to know the Lord. And prior to that, I loved to sing, and I was singing in 2 different bands at the time, one for weddings. I did the guitar masses at church, and I also sang in a club. But then after I got saved, the Lord drew me away from that, and I began to sing for the Lord 100%. And I went from that to becoming a worship leader for the Lord for over 18 years and leading Bible studies. All I can tell you is I fell so passionately in love with Jesus Christ. I was head over heels, and I was never the same. And I can still remember, this is what life is all about. And so Michael and I worked in the same company. And this is a funny story, but I always kind of liked him. And I didn't know the Lord and was kind of chasing him. And he had no interest in me. And I used to even back then say, God, he's so perfect. Why isn't this working? And it wasn't until I gave my heart to the Lord that he noticed. And he asked me out. He goes, something happened to you. Can I take you to lunch? I want to hear all about it. And so I shared the Lord with him. We started dating. On our third date, I led him to the Lord. And so now we've been married 43 years. We've raised 3 children together, and now we are in that magical season of being grandparents, and we have 3 grandchildren. And my other name is Nana. So on the business side, being an author, this is the book that the Lord had me write back in 2018. It's called The Family Letter. And this is something that my family has been doing for over 35 years. But all I can say to you is, the Lord has a heart for the family, and the family unit has been under attack for many years. And he's using this book to bring healing and to strengthen the relationships in the family unit. And it's become an international bestseller. And later I may talk about limiting beliefs, but this is one that I had. Who was going to want to read a book about letters? God knew, and it became an international bestseller. So he's impacting families around the world. And after becoming, I was a stay-at-home mom, loved every minute of it. And for every mother, you get to that place where your nest is starting to empty. Prior to that, I was very involved as a volunteer. Where I just really believe we are called to either to be in our communities and to be in our church, to use whatever gifts and talents God has given us. And so wherever he called me to lead and volunteer in the community, I was there. And then I did the same in my church as well. And I loved everything that I got to do. But then when my children began to leave, my husband, God bless him, he said, you need to think about what's next for you. And I never thought about that because I was really happy with what I was doing. I was very comfortable. But that's a transition that comes in the life of every woman. It's a time to rediscover yourself. It's a time to let go. And now, how will I thrive in this new season? And it's a story in itself, but through other things that happened, I found myself in the fashion industry for 10 years, which was out of my wheelhouse, totally over my head, but God called me there for different reasons. And it was because of that later, when the Lord led me to become a life coach, I studied transitions. Because I looked back at that time in my life where I was making that transition, I was making that shift and change in my life. All my insecurities, my inferiorities, all these inner challenges came up because I was so afraid of what was ahead of me that I looked back and thought, gosh, I wish I had someone who understood transitions that could have helped me navigate that process. And so I'm very passionate about helping people process the transitions. So I studied, I got certified with Leader Breakthrough out of California. It's a Christian organization. And I was also certified with John Maxwell. And as a speaker, I love to talk about the family letter. In fact, last night there's a grandparent coalition legacy nationwide that I was asked to speak last night about the family letter. I love to speak about that, and I love to speak about transitions because I think people don't understand the power and the purpose of the transition that God allows in our life. God does his best work in times of transition. You know, transitions aren't always just about moving from one place to another or retiring or changing careers. There's an inner transition that goes on because when God is moving you and calling you forth, things begin to get stirred up inside. And it's his time to say, let me strengthen that. Let me heal that because I'm calling you to something different. I'm calling you to something higher in my kingdom for you to do. But I need to touch a few things so you don't take that with you into that next season. So that's what I'm passionate about doing. With transitions, I have also written a course. I have an eight-week online course called Your Story's Changing, Finding Purpose in Life's Transitions. And I also have group coaching programs for women.
Thank you, Debbie. So I'm going to follow up. I had a question for you that follows up. Is this on? I guess it is. Okay. So that ties right into what you were just saying. How do you help people navigate the seasons of change or transitions in life, and is there a process?
Great question. And that's what I love about that question is there truly is a process to transitions. If you can see a circle, when you are beginning to be called forth by the Lord to experience either a change, a new opportunity, and also, let me just say, loss is also a transition, a sudden loss of your job, a sudden loss of your marriage, a sudden loss of a loved one. These are also transitions that are painful to process, but they also have a way that you need to get through them. Because what happens sometimes when we're experiencing frustration about things that are, we're afraid to move forward, right? We want to just say, well, I want this done. I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to push right through it. But God has a purpose in the transition, and if we push through it and don't allow it to have its work in us, we're going to miss the purpose of the transition. So first, I have a process called REAL, where I help you recognize the symptoms that are letting you know you are actually experiencing transitions, because sometimes it's not an actual event. It could be isolation, it could be a lack of confidence, a lack of passion, a lack of direction in life. These are signals that you're in transition. And then I take you through an evaluation phase where this is where God does his deep work, where we discover the mindsets, the limiting beliefs. We do an evaluation of where the inner struggles and challenges are, because they become magnified during this time. And then we have a time of alignment. So here you're kind of like recognizing, now you're coming into evaluation, and you want to get into where you align. This is where what you've discovered in the evaluation, God is saying, okay, now what will you let go of? What will you let go of? I've shown you so that you can move forward and live out in that next season. And this is where the struggle comes. We go back and forth between evaluation and alignment, because there are some things it's hard for us to let go of. But God is calling us to do that. And then we live out in wholeness and clarity in that next season.
Thank you, Debbie. Any questions from the floor? Anybody want to ask Debbie a question? Anybody? No? Okay, I'm going to ask Leanne. You've had a number of different career jobs. What are you most proudest of? What accomplishment are you the most proudest of?
I think one of the accomplishments that I'm most proud of is part of what I'm currently doing with Axia International, because we started back in 2019, the end of 2019, we started Axia International, my partner Jason and I, and we had developed. Basically, what happened was we had come together. I had interviewed for a job for his actually for-profit firm that we were going to, I was as a CPA, but as we met and we started talking, and he had a heart for nonprofit work and helping mission workers, and he saw that from my resume all of the nonprofit work that I had done, and he was like, we need to do something to help other nonprofits and to handle their administration. He's like, what are your pain points? And so we started talking, and so many times working in a nonprofit, you don't have the tools you need because you can't afford it. A lot of times, nonprofits, they're working on a shoestring, and you're trying to get by with whatever you can do. Everybody wears multiple hats because you can't hire enough people to do the jobs that need to be done. And so we came together and we were talking about, wouldn't it be great to have basically it's a software tool that can do multiple, can do the donor management, can do the accounting, can handle HR, and bring it all together so that you're learning one system and it all works, from the donor making their donation all the way to your financial reporting, and so that's what we set out to do. And we started, like I said, at the end of 2019, and then beginning of 2020, when we were ready to go out and start kind of marketing and building some clients, COVID hit. And it was all of a sudden, it was like everybody was like, okay, now, this is, what do we do? How do we handle our business? It actually, not, kind of that silver lining, it helped us because all of a sudden, we kind of market ourselves that we're like a virtual CFO. Well, so many nonprofits, people are having to learn how to navigate working remotely or working, in Zoom meetings and everything else. Well, that became our wheelhouse, and we were able to, we can come in and we can be that virtual CFO for you, or we can, do that. And so it just, it's one of those things, God closes a door someplace and then, opens the window someplace else. And that's what happened with us. It definitely was a, like I said, the silver lining, answer to prayer that we were able to do that. Now, here starting 2023, we have, I think, 90 clients. And as I said earlier, all over the world. And it's been amazing. It's been such a wonderful journey, and I'm so grateful to God that He has, it's just been a blessing, but not just to me, but to the people that we're helping. And it's just been a wonderful example of how God's able to put people where they need to be and to help navigate, uncertainty, which we've all been living the past few years.
Any other follow-up question for Leanne? No, quiet group today. Quiet, yeah. So George, I think everybody's doing a good job explaining what you're doing, what it is. George, do you feel, being open in your faith, you said you open your faith, has helped you in your career?
I do. Have I lost clients? Absolutely. As I've talked to clients and it said something about church or something like that, I've had clients that wouldn't do business with me for that, and I'm totally fine with that because, as I said, I want to do business with people that I want to be with, that I want to have conversations with. But at the same time, I've had clients, the people that I've met, and we've just started chatting, and they mention something, I mention something, and it goes into a deeper conversation way beyond business, just about faith and about things like that, about family. And it's turned into lifelong clients for me. I've had clients that have followed me from institution to institution because we click on a level far removed from banker and client. And if you can connect with people on something like that, you can connect in faith, you can connect in, and I don't mean, hey, we're both Catholic, hey, we're both this. No, we have similar beliefs. You don't have to have perfect matching beliefs. But if you can have similar beliefs to someone and more so a mutual respect of each other's beliefs and of each other's views and have open discussions. I've had political discussions with clients. I don't agree with them 100%. But it's being able to sit down and have a good mutual conversation with somebody on a better level. And I feel people that follow many different faiths have that ability much more so than people who don't. So.
Thank you, George. Any follow-up questions? Jeff?
Question for George. Given the, well, I don't want to say openly hostile political environment that the financial world is going through right now, do you see, for people who are retired or have on fixed income, you see how people are being canceled and because of their political beliefs and a lot of credit card companies are actually becoming heavy-handed in that, kind of implementing a social credit score for people. Do you see that as in the future for Christians in the financial world?
I think it could always happen, but I also think there'll always be a place for people of faith. One of the reasons that I work for Frost Bank is what Frost Bank stands for. For the people I get to work for, the fact that I don't have to hide my faith. A previous bank that I worked for has offered me a lot more money to go back, but the environment there was absolutely unfriendly to people of faith. And I wouldn't go back there for all the money in the world. And if I told my wife I was going back there, she'd probably knock me out because of how miserable I had become working there. So there'll always be a place for people, and I view that as their strength in numbers. So when faiths get knocked down, and it may happen, they'll band together, and there'll be somebody out there that will say, hey, we'll take care of you, we'll take care of you, we'll cater to you, because people want good clients. They want good, faithful people. They want people who have a higher purpose and are going to pay, or are going to be just all-around good people. And that's really what the financial industry really lives off of, is good people. And that's one of the things at Frost that we focus on. It was really weird when I went there. One of my first loans that I did when I was there, my boss reaches across the desk to this new client I had introduced him to, shakes his hand, says, we're going to do this deal. And I'm like, you haven't seen a single financial on this client. And we walk out, he goes, well, you know the client. You said he's a good guy. I've seen him, I've met him. I think he's a great guy. We're going to do this deal because that's the kind of person we want to do business with. And as long as you have institutions out there doing that, then I think we'll all have at least options. But that can work the same way. If an institution starts threatening that, and everybody of the faith says, you know what, you want to threaten that? You don't have my money. I won't use your credit card. I won't you advertise with this company. I won't do that company. The power lies with us as well.
I got a question for George. You mentioned when you were talking about your family that your oldest daughter is a member of the Boy Scouts and your younger daughter is a Cub Scout. I don't know if everybody's aware that a few years ago that the Boy Scouts amended their charter to allow girls to join. How's that working out?
So it's really funny, and people kind of laugh when I tell this story, because in 2018, when the Boy Scouts of America announced that they were going to allow girls in, I was the first one to stand up and say, you are ruining the last boys club we have, the last place for boys to be boys, and you're going to ruin it for us. And as they came out with more and more rules and more on how things were going to work, I said, okay, maybe this will work. God, I'm not too sure about it. And a good friend of mine, whose son was in scouting with my son, came to me and he said, George, imagine this. William comes home in his 20s, and he's introducing you to the girl he's going to marry. She's an Eagle Scout. What do you know about her? What do you know that she's done? What do you know that she's been through? What do you know that she's accomplished and learned? And I kind of couldn't deny it. So I went from in 2018 saying I don't want any part of this to by 2020 forming my own unit for girls for my daughter and another friend of mine's daughter. And we're growing that unit today. We've been around for a year and a half total. About to have 6 more girls join it. My wife got involved in it because of that, and she's actually the assistant scoutmaster at that unit. My wife was not a camper, had never camped a day in her life. We camped one night with the Cub Scouts, and then she went on to spend 7 days at a summer camp in the middle of Texas, up in Cold Springs, Texas, in June with the girls, sweating her butt off. The year after that, did summer camp again, and then this year she's going back to summer camp again. So it has been very eye-opening. I had the privilege of running the first large event for a district after the girl troops were invited in. And I thought it was going to be a disaster. And everybody's staring at me like, yeah, better you than me. The girls were no different than the boys. It poured down rain, and some girl runs out, and she's playing in the rain. And one of the girls goes, you got to get out of the rain. She's like, are you kidding me? My parents would never let me play in the rain like this. And I said, yep, that's why we need this. So you see a distinct difference between boys and girls. It's definitely They separate the troops. If folks don't know it, there are no co-ed troops. It's either boys or it's girls. The co-ed doesn't start until the ages 14 to 21, the venture crews, and that's actually been like that for 50 years. Just people kind of skipped that when they said, oh, girls are getting into the Boy Scouts. It's been 50 years that girls have been under the umbrella of the Boy Scouts of America. But you take an 11-year-old girl and an 11-year-old boy and try and teach them the same thing, you can't do it in the same way. The girls can sit there for an hour in a meeting and do nothing but learn. The boys, it's all about, when are we playing? When is the game? You got about 5 minutes to teach me something. I need to burn energy off. And to me, that leads back to a problem unrelated to that in our school system, in that we no longer let boys go run and burn off all that energy in our school systems. We sit them in a classroom all day and then wonder why they're all getting labeled with all these attention issues. But it has been a breath of fresh air for the Boy Scouts of America. That level is called Scouts BSA now. If you have referred to it in two different ways, the umbrella is the Boy Scouts of America. That 11 to 17 bracket, that's the khakis and greens that we're all used to seeing, that is officially Scouts BSA. It kind of matches what the rest of the world does. You have Scouts Canada, Scouts Mexico, all the different countries. It's Scouts and then that country. So it's Scouts BSA is that level now. And I have thoroughly enjoyed watching a lot of girls who probably would not be out camping and climbing and doing all these things, shooting guns and enjoying that opportunity. So.
George, a little more enthusiasm next time, would you please? All right, Debbie, can you share what mindsets and limiting beliefs are and how they affect our Christian walk?
Sure. So picture with me for a minute a bridge. Transitions are the bridges in life that take us from where we are to where our next season or place that God has taken us. As we walk across that bridge, in the middle is what I call the messy middle. And this is where all the inner challenges, the mindsets, the limiting beliefs come up about ourselves, the very things that we're struggling with, but that transition is magnifying it, bringing it up. So mindset is a way that you look at a task or an event in life. It's your cognitive reaction to it. So if you're being given another project to do, or you're being asked to, do something different, and you say, that's really difficult, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. Well, that's a mindset. That's a toxic mindset. A healthy mindset would say, well, that's really challenging, but I'm going to give it a try. And that's like we try to reframe it. Also, a toxic mindset is contrary to the Word of God, because the Word of God says we can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens us. His grace is sufficient for us. So when our mindsets are off, we need to also recalibrate them with the Word of God. Now, the limiting belief is different. It's not what you think about a task or an event. It's what you think about yourself. These are the beliefs. Now, when you think of the word limit, you think of something like with a lid or something in a box, and how we limit ourselves based on what we believe about ourselves. But the way that makes entrance into our souls and into our hearts are from the words that others have spoken to us, over us or about us. And it could start as early as back in childhood. And we take those words and we adopt them as our truth, even though they're a lie. And so the limiting belief is, I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I don't have value. I'm not smart enough. And you believe this about yourself. And these become the hindrances and the obstacles that keep us from moving forward. And again, a limiting belief is contrary to the Word of God, because we are the apple of His eye, and He loves us dearly. And so that's where I help my clients identify the mindsets, the limiting beliefs that are holding them back. We reframe them, put the Word of God, and then allow the Lord to heal that area of their life.
Very good. Thank you, Debbie. That's great. Miss Leanne. So, you've had several different jobs. How has prayer been a guiding force for you in making those choices?
Prayer has always been such an important part of my life. I mean, my since childhood, and to me, prayer. I mean, even though growing up Catholic in Georgia, you can appreciate that. We have a lot of those rote prayers that we had to memorize. The Hail Mary and the Our Father, and the Rosary and everything, and those are all great, and those are inbred in me. But to me, prayer is having a conversation with God and just being, just talking out loud, by yourself, and like I said, having a conversation with God. And I almost every morning, every evening, I have those conversations with God, and I'm, thanking Him for the blessings, thanking Him, asking for guidance, asking for, to point me in the right direction. And throughout my entire career, I have always, before I go into a meeting, before I go into, there's those conversations. And one of the reasons, I told you earlier how I have enjoyed so much throughout my career working in the environment where God is present, and where it is okay to talk about, in the workplace, that you don't have to, and like all throughout when I was at, working at the diocese, working at San Jose Clinic, working at Tamagua, we started every meeting with prayer. That was normal, and it's so refreshing. And and at Axia we have a weekly prayer time where we take an hour out of our every week as a team. We gather for prayer, and it's so like I said, refreshing. Specifically, one time when I was leaving San Jose Clinic, or I was contemplating leaving San Jose Clinic, and like I said, I was there for 15 years, and it was just part of my life. My kids, many of them, grew up there while I was at San Jose Clinic, and it was such a big part. And so it was a hard time when I started thinking about that. Okay, I think it is time for me to move on and do something different. And I remember this one particular day, I was driving home, and my son he was on Christmas break, and he had been volunteering at the clinic that day for us. And we were driving home, and I was telling him that, I said, I'm kind of ready for a change. I just am ready. And so we were, and he's like, well, where would you go? Like I said, he grew up working at San Jose Clinic. And he's like, what would you do? And I said, well, I don't know. I really enjoy working in the clinic, and I love my work. I love, and I want to continue doing that. But I just feel like it's time for me to go. And so that night I prayed about it, and because it did spark questions, and then, so I was praying about it. The next day, I'm at my desk, I'm in my office, and the phone rings, and I answered the phone, and it was Judy Deo, and which many of you know Judy, and she tells me, and this was like the week after Christmas, so it was like this time, and she goes, Leanne, I need to ask you. She said, over Christmas, my kids were all in town, and they've convinced me that it's time for me to retire from Tamagua. And she goes, it's going to be a hard decision for me. I haven't, she said, please don't say anything to anybody, because I haven't. She goes, you're the first person that I'm talking to about it. She said, but I really feel strongly that the Lord's led me to, for you to come and be to take my place. And I get off the phone with her. I just I sat back and I look up at the ceiling, and I'm like, okay, God, I guess you're talking to me. I mean, it just was amazing that the night before I was praying about, it's time for me to make a change, but I don't know where I'm going to go. And then Judy calls that day. I mean, it's so powerful. And so, and you need to be open to listen to when things happen. And so it's always been very, very important to me.
Thank you. We're about out of time here. I was just going to comment, as everybody talked about faith in the business world and faith in your jobs. I was a consultant for about 40 years, and we dealt with all the major oil and chemical companies, and my clients were always the vice president of environmental health and safety for Shell Oil or BP or Exxon, and I've had about 6 or 7 of them when we were downtown in a major restaurant ask me to pray before the meal right there in the restaurant, which is, if anybody knows Exxon, that doesn't happen at Exxon. And so it's great to hear. Thank you all for sharing and the great insights. Okay, and next month, Jeff, you're going to come back next month speak, right? Okay, come on back and hear Jeff, and we'll go from there. You all have a great month, and a great month before I see you again. Take care.